Hey YouTube, it's Steve with Rescape 2.0 again. I checked my other video. I actually watched a couple of my other videos, and I have a tendency to speak fast or mumble at certain points where I'm like, what is that? I don't know, I can't hear it. So I'm going to try to speak a little slower, even though I think quickly, so I talk quickly. But if you can't hear me, it's not going to work. So anyway, today's video is going to be, okay, I have no idea what I'm going to title it, but the theme of this video, because I've been talking about the present moment so much, one of the things with the present moment, if time is continually changing, one of the things with change, just with the definition of change, is you have something and then it's something else. It changes. But the problem with that, when something's continuously changing, let's take calculus, for example. One of the reasons calculus was so useful when it was invented, I think Isaac Newton, Principia Mathematica, or something like that. I can't pronounce it. It was in Latin. But anyway, and he didn't even use calculus. He used what would become calculus. He actually used geometry. So let me use geometry first. Okay, so you've got a sphere. One of the things, or let's just make it more simple, a circle. So one of the things with a circle is it's continuously changing. But if you actually try to draw a circle, it won't be a circle. So, because like at its crudest form, you have like a pentagon, and a hexagon, and a septagon, nonagon, and you get more sides and you get more points, but you need the points because the change is between the 2 points. So at what point then it gets more and more lines, more and more segments, but at some point it magically no longer has segments, and then any point in the circle is changing, but it's just that 1 point that's changing. And how can 1 point change? Because if it changes in that point, then you would have 2 points. So and calculus knows this. The way they do calculus when they invented it, they find the pattern of when those lines and dots get smaller and smaller, and they see the pattern that's emerging, and then they take it to the infinite degree. They actually never get to the infinite degree, but they have what they call limits, and they're like, well, we don't know what it's going to be like, but we know what's happening, and if we just take the rule or whatever's going on to the nth degree, the infinite degree, we know what the law is going to be at that point because we can see what the laws are now, and that's the limit. But you never actually get to the limit. They're saying we know this hypothetical limit, if we ever get to it, it'll have these properties. And honestly, in reality, because calculus is used in all sorts of things, engineering included, if you're building things, you got to have, pretty precise things, schematics and all that. But in reality we live in, at least in three-dimensional reality, with time, if you're like a scientist, let's go back to scientists, and then let's say you try to make a circle, as much of a circle as you can, then what's the limit? Because we are already, in this video, I've already determined you can't make a real circle in three-dimensional reality. You just get, more and more finely tuned lines. So, sorry, my phone's shaking. I'll try to hold it. It's one of the things too, I'll shake sometimes. My hands will shake. Anyway, oh my gosh. Okay, so it's probably not going to work. But anyway, so what's the limit scientifically? And scientifically, what the science... God, let me try something here. Sorry, I'm taking up your time watching this video, and I should be talking, but not. Okay. That's a lot of room above my head, but there we go. Okay, so what science has discovered, and again, probably the type of people watching these videos would already know this, but there's something called Planck length and Planck time. Now, the way you know that it's the smallest, indivisible point in time where you get so small it can't be divided into parts is because if you check the description of Planck time, it's the amount of time it takes a photon traveling the speed of light to go 1 Planck length. And they're like, oh, okay, so how long is the Planck length? And then they say it's the length that it takes for a photon traveling the speed of light to go 1 Planck time. So that's how if the thing defines itself, that's probably, you're not going to, at that point, I think they've given up. So another thing too, if you check my video on fluid reality theory from a long time ago, it's got like over a couple hundred views. I don't know why, but I always say that certain things will happen in reality where the laws of physics, Newtonian laws of physics and Einsteinian laws of relativity can't apply in these situations. They're just too weird. But what I didn't say was that quantum laws wouldn't apply, because quantum laws are the solution to a lot of these problems. And because with quantum, when quantum changes, it changes distances without going in between. It doesn't, like if you move if you move an object in 3D reality to get from one place to the other, there's a continuous existence between one place and the other. And then, again, people watching this video, you probably already know with quantum physics, the particles can pop in and out of existence. And what makes it even more peculiar and makes it, more likely to explain the weird stuff you'll see in reality when you do this mind, body, spirit stuff is that they'll sometimes appear in places because you looked at them. And then the question is, would they be there if you hadn't looked at them? And then, so you can just watch my fluid reality theory about that stuff. So anyway, with continuous change, you have a point in time that's changing just of itself without actually having a point to start and a point to go. And you find these patterns all in nature. So like in nature, there's very few things are a straight line in nature. I used to think crystals were a straight line in nature, but I later found out that they grow in a spiral. It's very slight, but it's not a straight line. You could say like a light beam travels in a straight line, but light diffuses. And if light travels in a wave, well, that's not a straight line. And if it's a particles aren't straight lines because they're tiny little whatevers. So if you can think of anything in nature that actually is legitimately a straight line, I'd be interested in knowing about it. So, but the reason this is because most of nature is always existing in the present moment, and in the present moment where there's a point in time continuously changing, their existence as they change in that point in time, as they move through that point in time, they're going to be continually changing. And then, like if there's Planck time and Planck length, if we go to the present moment, at that point you think, our minds can only, your mind still, but our awareness can only exist in the present moment, getting shorter and shorter pieces of time. And if you're like a super duper guru master that's 90 years old and been doing this your whole life, and it's like, one of the saints of the universe, you can't get past Planck time. So if you're existing in the present moment, the changes between the one point and then the Planck time to the next point. And just like the circle that gets the lines more smooth, but they're still tiny lines, maybe you can't see them anymore, the point in time where it actually becomes a circle, or the point in time the calculus actually hits the curves, where the point in the curve actually is the change, and the point in time where you hit the present moment, where time continuously is continuously changing in that one point. There's only one point in the present moment, and if there's change in the present moment at that one point, it has to be the continuous, like in the calculus or the sphere, and you get to these points. They can't be reached with the physical, logical mind, like I was saying before. You have to quiet that, and then when I said in Science of Discontent, the spirit comes alive. The reason that these things take place is because continuous change is perceived by the spirit. So it's not going to be in mathematics. The mathematics knows where it goes, because spirit goes in eternity, and so you have to make these things go to, the limits have to, what the pattern happens once it reaches eternity, what's the limit of that. But the spirit perceives these things very well. For a spirit, it would be difficult to see a line. It might be able to see a line, but to it, a circle would make a lot more sense than, a pentagon, getting more and more and more efficient. And the crossover is if it can't do one thing and it's suddenly something else, it's a switch, and there's no in between of that. So it's either a crude circle in three-dimensional reality, or it's an actual circle that can't exist in three-dimensionality. And if you notice, if it's not existing in three-dimensional reality, then you could say that it doesn't have substance, at least like we don't think you have substance. And then that makes sense why spirits don't have substance and God doesn't have substance, because they're not part of physical, you're not part of physical reality. And so why would the spirit see the seer perfectly smooth without any lines? It's because it exists in that place where things are just like that, where things are, because wherever you go in the spiritual realm, things are always in that place, that point that changes, the one point. Why, I don't know. It's just the way the universe or existence works or whatever. So to have continuous change in the present moment, one of the reasons your spirit comes alive with your mind still, because if you're going to be aware at a point that changes, but it's just that point, it has to be your spirit that's aware. Your mind can't be aware of that, because it'll still be trying to break down those little two dots in between points as much as it can. And the mind's limited, the spirit's unlimited, but the mind's limited. So even if it, the impossible task of getting your mind down to Planck time, which is like 10 to the negative 30 something, whatever, of what we use as seconds, it's just not possible. Even if you were an android human with a supercomputer and you got there, you wouldn't be in the present moment, because it's the mind. It has to be the spirit. The spirit is what views continuous changes. The reason nature is almost always in curves, like even the way our body works, like you can say like that's up down, which is a straight line, but look on the side, the fingers curve. This curves. My head, shoulder, like if you bend the elbow, that's straight, but look at what it's doing. It's like everything, like whatever it is. Like one of the reasons I think, one of the number one reasons or pieces of evidence I believe in a God is that because if the universe was created by a programmer, like a limited programmer, he probably would be straight lines everywhere. Because we build things and like we have houses. Our houses are freaking rectangles with corners, and walls are flat and doors are flat, and tables have corners and everything's flat. And so that's how a human would design something. But if God designed something, he's spirit, and he's part of the spirit sees everything is continually changing. It would make complete sense that everything in what he created, he created nature, not what we created, would be continually changing. And that's exactly what you see. So anyway, this has always been a conundrum for me, because you can't think. I love to think about things and figure them out and break them down, but you can't think about continuous change. You can cheat like calculus and know what it would be, but other than that, there's no way. And then you can be like, well, you can go to the present moment, but then you're not thinking about it anymore because your mind's still. So it really is a mystery of the universe. I'm sure like God and the angels and our spirit and all that, or true nature, it just makes common sense. Like, why wouldn't it be that way? But as far as the way we exist now, we're just not the way we're made. So anyway, that's Steve. Continuous change. This is Rescape. Have a good day.